The people are not being represented. That's how I feel. The people are not being represented.
The people have to decide to take back the power in this country.
All we've seen is us against them.
The lies, the dissonance, the hypocrisy of it all.
There is nothing keeping me supporting the Democratic Party right now.
As the 2024 general election approaches, it looks eerily familiar. A January poll found that 37% of voters would be somewhat or very likely to consider supporting a third-party candidate if Joe Biden and Donald Trump were the nominees of the two major parties.
Having two candidates who are both sort of underwater in terms of their favorability with the public, that I think does open the door to third-party candidates.
So, does a third-party candidate have a shot at the White House? How could a third-party candidate influence the election?
You know, in 2016, a lot of people have talked about Jill Stein, who was the Green Party nominee. It's pretty hard to actually make the case that she decided that election. I think there is perhaps a better argument or more discussion about the 2000 election, where Ralph Nader was the Green Party nominee, and you had an unbelievably close 537 vote margin in Florida.
The Democratic Party is going to have to calculate the prospect of losing more votes to the Green Party if they don't respect the progressive wing of their party in future elections.
So it's not impossible to imagine that a few Green Party voters might have voted for Al Gore in that contest, and perhaps that would have been enough for Gore to have won the election in such an incredibly close race.
And tonight, for the sake of our unity as a people and the strength of our democracy, I offer my concession.
The most recent example of a third-party candidate actually winning like a very large percentage of the vote, all told, is Ross Perot.
We've got two candidates that were funded and paid for by PAC money, foreign lobbyists, and special interests.
In 1992, he won about 18.5%, 19% of the national popular vote. He didn't carry any states, but there's been a kind of a long-standing debate over whether or not he influenced the outcome of that election, where Bill Clinton defeated the incumbent Republican president, George H.W. Bush. I do think that these conditions with two candidates who are not well liked running, that you do have a greater opportunity for there to be a higher third-party vote share this time around.
In 2024, two third-party candidates have emerged. Cornel West and Robert Kennedy Jr. have appealed to voters by taking positions dismissed by Republicans and Democrats.
West's appeal is obviously going to be toward the more left-wing side of the political spectrum.
I feel that the Democratic Party has really moved away from representing any values that I have. The final straw for me from Joe Biden and the Democratic Party, it was their support of Israel, giving billions of dollars in military aid. Cornel West talks all about peace.
We want an end to the siege. We want an end to the occupation. We want Palestinians to live a life of dignity.
If you have a close election in a state decided by a few thousand votes, if a few thousand votes go to Cornel West, it's easy to imagine that at least some part of that could have gone to Biden if West weren't on the ballot. RFK Jr. Kennedy, he is certainly polling the best of any of the third-party or independent candidates who've been tested.
Both candidates have had their chance. They've had their 4 years in the White House, and I haven't seen a difference that I would like to see. I'm very sure that Kennedy will provide great results for every American.
We need to pry loose from the hammerlock of the corrupt powers in Washington, D.C., and make this nation ours again.
On the one hand, he does tend to actually have better ratings among Republicans than Democrats in terms of favorability ratings. At the same time, Kennedy's last name is Kennedy. The Kennedys are a very dyed-in-the-wool Democratic family. Their party politics here are pretty clear that, the Kennedys are Democrats. So I would say, on the whole, that to me may make Kennedy a slightly bigger risk to Biden.
In addition to the candidates, a nonprofit group called No Labels is considering running what they call a unity ticket, in which ideals of both parties will be represented.
No Labels is a bipartisan group that has existed for a while now that's been sort of trying to find a way to break through the very polarized partisan morass of our current politics.
I want to see us have somebody that is willing to work with the other side, gain respect, show respect, collaborate. Biden and Trump are throwing salvos. They're not saying what they stand for.
Trump's assault on democracy isn't just part of his past. It's what he's promising for the future.
But we know that Joe Biden has always been too mentally incompetent.
It's just rhetoric. The wonderful thing that No Labels has done is they put together a common sense policy handbook that outlines several of the things they stand for. Obviously, if candidates are brought forward, they have to identify with that and relate to that because that's what we're accustomed to.
They don't have a candidate yet. They don't have a nominee. They might not even choose to offer their ballot line to a candidate, which is sort of the way they've been framing it.
An October poll found that 63% of Americans feel there's a need for a third political party. But in a separate February poll, no third-party candidate polled higher than 10%.
Having a big name would be very helpful for No Labels. The problem is, who is that big name? While the country clearly has dissatisfaction with the two major party candidates and people are not pleased, at the end of the day, both Trump and Biden are pretty popular among their party as a whole. I do think that in the long run, it is not impossible that a third-party candidate could break through. I think it's difficult to imagine in our current political climate. Political parties are a lot weaker today than they used to be. So could you have like a Ross Perot figure of some kind come through who's wealthy, throws a lot of money around and makes an appeal that ends up breaking through and actually competes to win? I think that is certainly possible in the future. I just think things are so sort of partisan and polarized right now that it's really difficult to imagine a scenario where they break through. The third-party candidates, they don't win the presidency, but if they tend to take more from one major party or the other, they could be seen as having influenced the outcome of the election.